Hello, you're welcome to another session in our English tutorials. For this class, we're going to be talking about comprehension and summary. And by the end of this class, you're expected to know the different passages that we can have in comprehension and also be able to summarize different passages as you see it and as you are asked to. Okay, and also be able to answer the various questions. Okay, so now let's move right to it. What is comprehension? Comprehension is the ability to understand and get meaning from a spoken or written, most often written language, especially a passage, because if you're writing an exam on the use of English, it's going to be written passages and you should be able to read it and comprehend it and understand the core messages. For summary, this demonstrates your ability to be able to comprehend the information and ideas in a particular passage. It is usually brief and in your own words you restate the content of the passage in very brief sentences, usually not more than 3 sentences. So we're going to be looking at the different types of comprehension passages. The first one here we have the description, because there's some passages that come in different forms. So the first one we're going to be talking about is description. A good descriptive writing creates an impression in the reader's mind of an event, a place, a person, or a thing. The writing will be such that it will set a mood or describe something in such details that the reader can see it and would be able to recognize it. Okay? The words used in a descriptive passage, okay, in descriptive writing, will be so concrete and vivid that in your imagination you will be able to say, okay, this is what it's describing, this is how it is, it has this shape, it has this size, and you'll be able to see it. Even if you're just walking by the road, you remember what you read and you say, oh, this is what the person described. So let us look at an example of a descriptive passage. The old man was bent into a capital C, his head leaning so far forward that his beard nearly touched his knees. From there, using the word capital C, you'll be able to describe the man bent over in a curve and you would know how the man was sitting. Then the head is said to be leaning so far forward that his beard nearly touched his knees. That is enough description for you to be able to know how the man was positioned. That is descriptive writing. The next type of passage is the narration. It is the use of writing, or the use of reading or speaking commentary to convey a story to an audience in the sequence of events or activities. It's a narration of the sequence of things, like you wake up in the morning, I brushed my teeth, I had my bath. Is the sequence of events. So let us look at an example of a narrative passage. Last year was the first time I had ever been the new kid at school. The first 4 days I was completely alone. I didn't even speak to a single person. Finally, at lunch on the 5th day, Kate sat down right next to me. She was popular. Pretty soon, all of Kate's friends were sitting there right next to me. After lunch that day, it seemed like all sorts of people were happy to be my friend. You can see how he explained it from his first day at school to the 4th day at school to his 5th day at school and subsequent days at school. How one girl sat beside him and everybody after that wanted to be his friend. It came in a sequence. That is a narrative. It starts from the first event, moving on, and moving on. So the moving on also, the next type of passage is the exposition. In an expository passage, you give information, you explain a subject, you give directions, and you show how something happens. In expository writing, linking words like first, second, then, finally, and usually are used to help readers follow the idea. For example, if I say, first, I packed my bags. Second, I arranged my shoes. Third, I walked out the door. Fifth, I entered into the school bus. All of that. Expository are used basically for an example of the use of exposition is for a cookbook recipe. They tell you first boil the water. When it is hot and steaming, you add the carrots, you add the vegetables, and next you stir and add seasoning. Use of words like that showing sequence is an exposition, used basically when they're to show you directions, to show you steps to follow, and to show you the procedures. The next type of passage we have is the argumentation. An argumentative essay is a type of essay that presents arguments about both sides of an issue. The general structure of an argumentative essay follows this format. First, we have the introduction. In the introductory part of the argumentative essay, attention grabbers are used, background information is given about the subject matter, and thesis statement. The thesis statement of whoever is explaining or making the point. The next is the body, and in the body you have 3 body paragraphs or 3 main arguments or points to buttress your thesis statement. We also have the counter argument, an argument to refute earlier arguments. Okay, because we have it, this is argumentative, you have to present both sides of it. Once you're giving the introduction, you're giving your thesis statement, you're giving your supporting points, then you will have the counter argument. Then it is followed by the conclusion, and the conclusion would be rephrasing the thesis statements, the major points, a call to action or attention, and concluding remarks. I'm sure we are used to the argumentative essays. Though we do not know it as argumentative essays, we know it as debates. First of all, I want to convince you and not confuse you that this is this, fathers are better than mothers, or farmers are better than teachers. You know all of that. My first point is teachers are this. So that is an example of an argumentative essay. You introduce, say, your thesis statement, then you give your points, then the next you give your counter argument, then you have a conclusion. So the next type of comprehension passage we should learn is the persuasion. A persuasive speech is given for the purpose of persuading the audience to feel a certain way, to take a certain action, or to support a specific view or course, aimed at changing a person's view, attitude, or behavior towards some event, an idea, or object, or even person. It is usually written most times, but it is most better spoken. Okay, so for persuasion, it's about trying to convince someone to take a particular side on an issue. Okay, trying to convince someone to take a particular step or action. An example of a persuasive speech or essay or delivery is when a lawyer is giving a closing argument in court. Is arguing about whether the defendant is innocent or guilty of a crime. I do not know how many of us must have watched law movies or been in the court to see how a lawyer would try to make the judge and everyone present in court and also the jury to believe that his client, he's innocent, or whoever it is guilty of a particular crime. He persuades people to see it in his own light and come towards his own side. That is an example of a persuasive speech. So with that, we'll have come to the end of today's class, where we've been learning about comprehension and summary. We've talked about the different passages that exist for you to be able to note them when you come across comprehension passages, and being able to spot them and answer the questions. Okay, so do not forget to follow us and keep tabs on us, because we're going to be working on some comprehension passages, answering the questions, being able to summarize everything. So follow our link to get that video on our comprehension and summary exercises.